this meeting of the Finance Committee on February 15th, 2024. Start with open forum, if anybody has anything for open forum. Okay. Our 7:05 agenda item is an update and a discussion on the FY25 budget and the override. And we've got Select Board Chair Tom Clay and School Committee Chair Valerie Young. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here tonight. We'll try to be brief. What we just wanted to do is sort of summarize some of the meetings that you may have watched or may not have had a chance to earlier this week. Really starting with the publishing of the budget memo, which I think you all had a chance to look at, or hope you did. First of all, again, thank you for your work. Partly as a reflection of your work and recommendations, we looked at 3 different options to model. We looked at a $6 million override, which we talked about in the past FinCom meeting. Sort of the original override that we'd been talking about in the beginning, which had come down a little bit from 8, which was 7.6, and then also a larger override that would have provided more of a level service budget. I think the Select Board reacted strongly to very much valued your input and also the input we're getting from lots of people in the community about what can really be tolerable for people to accept in terms of new taxes. But when we looked at the $6 million override, a number of us had some concerns about it cutting pretty deeply into school student-facing services as well as public safety-facing services. So in our discussion on Tuesday, we talked about sort of where we thought a balance point might lie. And the place that we sort of ended our discussion was around a number like 6.8, an additional 800,000 would add 8 to 12 student-facing, public safety-facing positions back in, and we felt that got closer to addressing the balance point between respecting the taxpayer and understanding that this needs to be a shared responsibility for us all, but also making sure that we preserve some of the critical services that we have here in town. So we deliberately did not want to take a position on a specific number because we wanted to take the opportunity to come and talk to you, talk to our fellow board members on the school committee. It's certainly helpful if we're in consensus. We'd like there to give every chance for us to be in consensus. So we want to come and share where we are with you. I know you're not taking any vote on this tonight, but we just want to take the opportunity to share where we were and what was behind the discussion and answer any questions. 2 other short points, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague. We also made a further reduction in the fiscal 25 budget that would accompany an override. Again, I think some of the hard work that we've all done together identified some opportunities. So at this point, the budget the Select Board has asked for is $1 million below the kind of original town manager's recommendation and the superintendent's recommendation. I think Dan has some detail of what that is. We looked at where the dividing line should be, like why $1 million and not $1.5 million. And we decided we wanted to hold short of student-facing and public safety-facing services in this fiscal 25. Further, I should say, the initial 500 did have some student-facing impact and some public safety-facing impact. There were a couple positions that we did eliminate as part of the 500. But the next 500, we wanted to see if we could make that work without making additional public-facing, student-facing cuts. So that's why we landed there instead of a different number.
Also, ask a question.
Sure, if that's okay with the chair, Madam Chair.
Yeah. When you say that you've made a 500 cut, I don't think we know what that is yet. So when you say it's certain people, I don't have that detail. So I don't know what that doesn't. That's just a number to me. So I'm having a hard time connecting that.
Well, the first guidance was the sequence of this is that we typically at the Select Board are not say this position, that position, this position, that position. We're saying we've looked at all this, we understand what the options are, here's the guidance. We'd like you, the budget making professionals, to then work this and come up with the best proposal that you feel hits the right balance point within that guidance. So we're not typically like tagging specific things by policy. I do think since then and now, Dan and Kristen have met with Superintendent Chu and Valerie and have identified what they think will be in that package. And so I don't know if that's something that you want to talk about tonight or if that's something we want to wait a little bit on. But yeah, absolutely, that detail is part of what we're going to present. But when the Select Board makes a request, we don't itemize what that should be. We say, we have the input, we understand what the options are, so here's the guidance.
So I guess I get confused on, because I know that FinCom gave a list of recommendations, and not all of them are necessarily ahead. So when you express the concern of eliminating positions, I think some of that can be done without eliminating any positions.
And some of what we've asked for in the next 500,000, I think in the work that they've done, doesn't eliminate positions. So
Okay.
I think that you're right, that there are some opportunities. We looked at some of the things like the revolving account balances, both what we should do now and what we should do by policy over time. So that sort of leads into my last point before I turn it over to Valerie, which is we have a real commitment on the select board to continue this work. And so we know that the budget challenge isn't going to fade after 1 year. So I'm planning to ask Kristen and Dan in our next select board meeting to organize quarterly review meetings, if you're open to it, with you, to look at how we're doing on getting to some of the efficiency targets that we've set, reacting to new information so that we're not doing budgeting just once. We're doing budgeting, unfortunately, sort of continuously as we're facing this challenge through time. And also, a good recommendation that I heard from a few people, including Christina, was taking something like the Budget Task Force as a standing recommendation group to Kristen and the other budget makers that would continue to meet in between these meetings. So this might be people who would continue to do research on best practice, research for finding other opportunities. So basically the regime I'm proposing at the next meeting is quarterly review with an ongoing standing committee to stay on top of these things, do research in between meetings, and make sure that we make this a continuous process and aren't back here next year, starting from exactly where we are when we end this process. So that's where I am, and then I don't know, Valerie, if you've got other things you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I don't know if everybody, I try not to assume that everybody watches all school committee meetings, but we did try to sort of process the override memo in our meeting. It didn't lead to a vote. We don't have like an official consensus around one of the scenarios, and obviously it's not our decision, it is the select board's decision. But I think the takeaway there was that a majority of members felt like the 3-year impact over until FY27 projections under the $6 million override basically get you to the same place that the no override FY25 projections would be with limited electives, reduced interventionists, and those worried us. So while we didn't take a formal vote or anything on one of the override scenarios, I think I can confidently say that the school committee was worried about a $6 million override.
So again, we just want to come back to you and share where we are, answer questions. At this point, we are at a time when sort of the exploration and discussion needs to narrow to a pretty specific proposal. We believe the fiscal 25 guidance now is final for sort of completion. And in our next meeting, we'll talk about sort of where we think the override target should be set. So if there's additional time, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. I'll open it up to committee members if you have questions or comments. Go ahead, Ingrid.
I just had a quick one regarding the comp reserve in the school budget. So in the full 8 million plus override, or the full request, it would fund reopening the teacher contract. Would that still trigger with a lower override?
So in one of the, and we haven't, once we get sort of clearer guidance, but, well, now we have clearer guidance on FY25, so we haven't met since then. But one of the proposal ways to get there was a pared down comp reserve that involves losing some of the flexibility with some of the bargaining units and non-union positions, but it does preserve the 1.6% for Unit A and C. Yes.
Okay.
To get to average pay, which is the town-wide commitment.
Right. So then we would lay off people potentially in order to fund that?
I guess that's a decision that would be made during the negotiation, and certainly something that would be up to the school committee to do. The override, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but the reopener is in there. It is a right that both parties have,
Yeah.
if there's any override. But what gets negotiated is the final solution.
That was my question, if there was a threshold override or if it was any override that would reopen the contract.
The wording, I hate to quote a legal document without it in front of me, but it does not specify an amount.
Okay.
So I have a question or comment up there. If $8 million override is level services, right? So by going with the override less than level services, the town is kind of indicating there is no extra money at all. We're still, like, if you have a goal of 100 million in 2023, and you have same goal is 108 million, right? So if you're passing 107, by purchasing parity, you have less money than you should have. So in that case, there is no extra money. We can use that as an argument to not open.
So that's certainly something that the school committee could take up, you're right. That could be something that they choose to do. I guess I would comment on one thing, which is the total cost, known contract cost expansion is more like $12 million. So even the $8 million said this is going to be a shared responsibility between town and schools and the taxpayer. We're not going to ask the taxpayer for all of it. We're going to find ways to be efficient. What 6.8 does is it moves it to more of a balanced view in some, at least in my take, but still leaves a substantial amount of work for us to do to find cost reductions. So we still, it's detailed in the budget document, but there's still more than $1 million of service like reduction in each of the next couple of years that we need to find together.
Hari, sorry, can I ask a
Yeah, go
clarifying
ahead.
question? Was your question more though about like the reopener?
Yeah.
So.
I'm more addressing that if in a level services, your budget is less than what you have in terms of purchasing parity, there is no extra money for supporting an opener cause. That's where I was going with.
I guess I just would reiterate our commitment to average pay. And just because this union is so big that we have to ask every time we want to bring them to average pay, that's kind of just an unfortunate reality, right? That it's not a smaller union that we can right-size their pay within an operating budget, but they deserve to meet benchmark just like all of our other unions, and the school committee has made that commitment with this reopener. I can't predetermine negotiations, but I would have integrity to stand there and say that that's a value that I placed on this override.
Okay.
Dennis?
Yeah, I watched the meeting Tuesday night, the select board meeting, and it was a very interesting meeting. I think it was a lot of interesting. One thing that I want to bring to your attention was Andrea led off the discussion about when it was kind of like a little bit of like a bid, what's the number should be and all this, and she led off with the $6 million. And I think it would be very wise for everybody to go back to that, because when she did it, she has a lot of experience in history in this town. All right, when she gave that number, she was doing it even with reservations at that point. Okay, so what I'm going to be, I'll be a little bit more blunt. I think you're operating at a level that is way too high for this town to take. And there's two things I want to say about it. First of all, I don't think you're grasping the impact that this override will have on a lot of property owners in this town, and you have to think about that. The other thing, too, is that what I'm afraid it's going to, if you thought that the last discussion we had at the town meeting was a little bit divisive, potentially you're looking at a very divisive discussion over this, because you're talking about real economic conflicts, all right? Don't forget, the property tax is the most regressive tax there is. It's on a tax on people's residences. They need that residence. They earned it. That's their piece of property. So that's going to raise a lot of issues with them. The other thing, too, that was very significant, not just from you, but from everybody in this discussion along, is the fact that I think it's pretty clear to see the state is completely pulling out of its commitment to support the municipalities. That is a revolutionary situation. I mean, because the bottom line is, and it was even back to the origin of Proposition 2.5, 1980, it was widely recognized that communities could not survive simply on their own property taxes. So if the state of Massachusetts is now reneging from that, that is putting us in a very, very critical situation. And these things have to be considered as we move forward, or we'll have a lot of conflict in town. So I just want to raise those with you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
One.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead,
go ahead.
Heather, go.
Heather?
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to, we talked about the 3-year plan, and you talked about from 11 million to 8 million or whatever. These documents that we've reviewed, I've looked at the out years. Is this based on the 8 million or the 11 million?
What document are you referring to?
The budget, all the details.
That was based upon an $8 million override.
Are you
Okay.
talking, I'm sorry, so you were talking about is the original town manager's recommendation budget, what was that based on?
Right, because
Yes.
you just mentioned that there was some pain to pulling it back to 8 million, so I wanted to just make sure that I read something based on 8 million and not the 11 million.
The original, Dan, you can help me, the original town manager and superintendent's request budgets had a budget shortfall in fiscal '25 of 5.5 million, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that budget had a shortfall of 5.5 million.
And
But
we
we're
were,
saying
we were
that there's-
proposing an $8 million
We were proposing an
override
8
at the
million,
time.
which would have the override, so that would help us bridge the 3-year problem.
Right, but
that
the
1
other
year
years
was
are,
not involved.
the other years are in here as well, so I just want to make sure that they're reflecting the 8 million, not the 11 million, because it's a multi-year problem.
That's exactly right. The 8 million already had reductions relative to level service, so that we weren't going to be in the 8, we
Okay.
knew we couldn't go to the town for 11 million.
Okay.
So we designed the first look budget at 8 million.
Okay,
So with the 6.8 million direction, we are adjusting the outward years too, so it's not artificially inflating those years.
okay, okay. So then
Right.
I also, I watched the meetings as well, I think I was at them, some of them. And I came away a little bit frustrated because I feel like the schools have already taken some of the recommendations or our like sheet that we sent out last week and put together what they would bring things down, and they've kind of already shown their cards in a respect, so I feel like,
All of those, sorry, just not to interrupt you, but, which I did, but most of them were from Budget B. So for anyone that didn't watch, most of them were from Budget B, the no override budget. But we did go through the thought experiment based on FinCom's suggestions from the previous meeting of what would that look like if we reacted to that 500,000 reduction and the 300,000 of offsets.
right, so
We didn't take official action on that, I just want to clarify.
everything I've looked at, or I've kind of considered, is taken the full 8 million. So I looked at those details, and so I came away a little perplexed from the select board meeting because, we've seen some potentials, not wanting to do, but is out there, and then I feel like there's a list of things that are doable, that are not really impacting services or affecting a body. And then I'm going to echo what Dennis said. I don't think 6.8 is going to happen. I could be wrong, but I feel like we need to put our best foot forward, be as trim as we can in what we ask, because the alternative is it's not going to pass. So I still think that number, and I know the select board wasn't comfortable going down to 6, but I feel like, did they look at the detail we had provided? Because I'm very comfortable with some of those things, and maybe they're not, but.
Yeah, I think that they did study it closely, and they felt that some of the things that would be public safety facing and student facing in the required cuts.
But I don't think we
Would-
put a lot of public safety in those cuts.
Well, so let me just say that a number of things that you put forward, a number of things in the summary document that if we're talking about the Excel sheet that I had that we had gone over. So a number of those were essentially one-time monies that were not operating fund monies, if that makes sense. So there are things you can do to take one-time monies out of out of revolving funds. That is actually part of the plan in stages to do. But when we looked at all the numbers and we sat down together with the budget planners and said, what do we feel we can do out of the operating side, not one-time money reductions, that will get us all the way down to the things that have been contemplated that won't affect student-facing or public safety-facing positions, that's where we ended up with that number. So I understand that number may not be exactly the same calculation you did. I think it includes a lot of the suggestions that this body recommended. I think the $1 million reduction overall includes a bunch of the things you helped identify. we didn't feel comfortable going in this budget all the way to things that would further reduce student-facing or public safety-facing. And that's why we decided not to do everything that was identified and contemplated. We did a lot of it, almost all of it, but we decided to draw the line at that point.
Okay, I just, at this point, I think that it's hard for me to not feel like there's more of an attempt to kind of meet a middle ground, because it's just such a huge number. I mean, if the votes were close on these other overrides and then the town center building failed, I don't see it, and I feel like that's more of a world of hurt to not try to get the best foot forward.
So I respect your political judgment about what is passable, and we all have different ideas politically about what the voters will support, and so I nothing more than that. I just respect your comment, and I know it's out of a concern that we could end up with nothing. So
Exactly.
I understand that. I'm having a lot of conversations trying to set, with the help of all these boards, the number in the right place. So we have the same goal in that we want to put forward something that'll pass. We may just have different information about what that is.
If I could just add, I think in part of that goal, though, as leaders of the community, we need to think about our words matter, right? And that people do look to what we say in these meetings and take snippets of them and repeat them. And so I would just ask everybody to be mindful of that.
So, you offered at Tuesday night meeting, you offered a one-step, two-step approach, and you've laid it out pretty good. And I just wanted to suggest to you, I think a multi-year override is very hazardous, all right? For one thing, you're going to call it the Override Stabilization Fund, but a lot of folks are going to see it as a pile of money, okay, that is now sitting there. And as you know, we have our free cash, and it's watched very carefully. And people are going to get I think they're going to get a little bit concerned about a pile of money like that, because the experience has been, if it's there's a tendency to let it, to dissipate it over time, and it doesn't go to where it wants. I would recommend that if you're going to try to take on an override straight on, you go to the year issue. Take what the issue is for the year. You can offer suggestions for the future. There's no problem with that, things that we have to do. But I just think that that's a big stretch for a lot of people to bite into. It's been unprecedented in this town. I have never seen a multi-year override. I mean, maybe Marilyn remembers one, but I don't remember one in over 40 years. So that's going to be a real big issue itself with a lot of the voters.
You guys all set? So I think, thank you both for coming
If
here.
they're concluding, I just want to.
Oh, did you have one more? Yep.
So Valerie, earlier what I said was, my comments were not to avoid paying teachers fair salaries. Everyone should get fair salaries, what they're worth, how they're contributing to the community. I was merely trying to get a legal language binding with the situation.
Yeah.
I just want to make that on the record, saying that nobody will misunderstand
Okay.
my position there.
Thanks, Harry.
Yeah. Just real quick, I just want to echo what Dennis was saying, that I also have a concern with the idea of a stabilization fund with this big of a number. I can understand mathematically that it will cost more over time, but I think doing the two-step approach is going to be a little bit more palatable than saying, okay, we're just going to hand over extra money to the town rather than, so that the town can get interest on it, right, as opposed to individuals getting interest. So I can see that being another struggle if we're asking for more than what this year requires. So that's just my gut feeling. I haven't heard, haven't been polling people, but that's kind of what I think would cause more challenge in getting this to pass. So.
Thanks.
So again, thank you both for coming here and speaking to us and hearing our feedback. I think you kind of get the sense of where a lot of us are leaning. I can see the compromise. I can see the compromise with the reductions versus the impact on the taxpayers. So I do like that the number has come down. I'm not gonna lie, I do wish it was lower because I am concerned about the impact on the taxpayer, but I can see the balance there. I'm also happy to see that going forward, we'll have quarterly updates and that we'll keep working on this, because I think pretty much everybody sitting here has another list in their head of of places where we think we could give you, you know, some suggestions.
Yeah, we'll need
What I'm hearing is that you missed the budget task force.
Well, you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself after this, right? Yeah.
You have too much free time.
Yeah, exactly. I do have a whole other list of things that I wish we could have explored on the budget task force and kept going. So I do think that that's a really good idea. The biggest thing, because I feel like everything keeps coming back around to our comparable towns, and I'm gonna reiterate what I said in the budget task force, which is, I think we at least need to look at those again. We may come up with the same list for whatever reason, but I think it's time to sort of look at that, and possibly, if the list doesn't change, I think we need to figure out a way to incorporate our per capita income into some of our decisions. I don't exactly know what that is or what that looks like, but I think there needs to be a way to sort of mathematically account for that.
Sure.
And then the last point, which I probably should have said first, but I think you can probably also tell that we're all very detail-oriented and want all the numbers. And so where I think maybe some of the apprehension is, we haven't seen the details of the new FY25
Yeah.
budget yet. So there's a little bit of, you know, we don't exactly know what that looks like. We don't know.
I can speak. So I just shared that with the select board yesterday late afternoon.
Okay.
So I wanted to give them the benefit of having at least 48 hours with that. So we think we'll be prepared to share that with the finance committee tomorrow before the end of the day.
Okay.
We just don't want to put it out live
Sure.
tonight without getting the select board's feedback on that first.
Okay.
I'm still working on the modeling too, so it takes a while to go through that, so
Sure.
I'm part of the holdup too.
So we'll see it projected out
Yes.
3 years, kind of
Yes.
like the memo from the other night.
Yes,
Great.
we're working on the exact same, it's called scenario 5.
Okay.
Just what we need.
Hopefully, we're not at scenario 20 by March 23rd.
Let's hope not. Let's converge this, because we have a FinCom book to write at some point, and, you know, late on the 29th, I think, or something, but,
And town meeting.
in town meeting, yeah.
We'll get it to them.
Okay. Well,
Great.
thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks. Okay. So let's go on to our 7:20 agenda item, which is to review and make recommendations for the following articles for the annual town meeting. And we are starting with Article 5, which is accept town reports.
It's the easy one.
Do we need an explanation? Do we all know that that's
That's
just
the
kind of
easy
a basic, yeah, okay, so can I,
So move that we recommend.
thank you, and
Second.
a second, okay, I have to do roll call, so, all in favor, Beth,
Aye.
Shelby,
Aye.
Heather, I'm an aye.
Aye.
Tom, Aye.
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 Dennis.
Aye.
Ingrid, and Shinji, aye, okay, so that passes unanimously, thank you.
I thought Sinji was missing. There he
Yeah.
is.
Article 6, approve fiscal year 2024 budget supplemental appropriation. Dan, can you just?
Sure.
Or,
So this is a pretty light article for the supplementals. We have the normal 400,000 in snow and ice. Our town meeting is early in the year, so in speaking with Kyle, we thought it was good to allocate the full 4 that was in the financial model. If we don't need it, it's going to close out the free cash at the end of the year anyway, so it's just good to close that gap. The other $976 is for the sealer weights and measures. It's basically a contract that we have with NIMCOG where they go around and take care of all the responsibilities to go with that, measuring and scales, all those types of things. We didn't have an exact number when we budgeted for last year. We were told that the full contract is for $16,500 for this year, so we were $976 short, so we're asking town meeting to fund that. The good news is it's staying level for next year at $16,500, which might be the only line item that is, so,
And that number got carried, correct?
yes, yep.
Okay. I thought so, just looked at a lot of numbers, so. Thank you.
could I have a motion to recommend Article 6?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Again,
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And Shinji? Aye. Okay.
Good.
That passes. Article 7, appropriate for perchlorate expenses.
So for this, we're asking for 110,000 to refill the coffers for the next year. We did receive word from the water department that they're doing some additional testing, so we are going to have a few additional expenses, but we think we can, float to next town meeting. If not, we have October to come back. But do you want to explain the?
Yeah, so the additional testing is actually associated with a shutdown operation of the perchlorate plant to understand if the plume is moving or not. So we're actually moving into a phase of potential closure in the next few years. So this added expense is to do additional testing related to the next phase of closure for that.
Does that reduce our expense?
Not this year,
But
but in the
when
future,
we move to
when we
that?
move to closure, yes, we would no longer, we may need to carry, 20,000 a year perhaps. I don't know what the number is, but it would definitely reduce our yearly expense.
Do we know, would that be like a year or two out? Or
I believe
how?
it's 4 to 5 years out,
years out.
unfortunately.
Okay.
We are required to follow this state procedure.
Gotcha. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Okay, can I get a motion to approve
So
Article
moved.
7 appropriate? Okay, thank
Second.
you. Second.
Sorry.
Well,
Aye.
we're in the rhythm now.
Aye.
Aye.
job today.
Aye.
Aye.
Dennis?
Aye.
Aye.
Ingrid? Shinji? Aye. Okay, unanimous on that one. Okay, Article 10, approve Community Preservation Committee recommendations. Marilyn, hello.
Thank you for letting me come before you. I wanted to mention a few things about us. I have been sitting on CPA for 23 years since its inception, and the way we handle money has not changed. We don't spend money ahead of getting it in the fall. So we never spend the money that's promised to us because promises break. We don't bond unless we're in a financial position to handle such borrowing. And we don't spend more money than we actually have at the time that the applicants come before us. That way, we are not sitting handling problems that we didn't anticipate. That has always been the way we have done the funding, and it hasn't changed. So the items that you have before you, the first one is $30,000 from the undesignated fund balance for the Westford Museum Handicapped Accessibility Plan located at 2 Boston Road. At the current time, there is no handicap access in the museum to get to the second floor, and there's also monies in this for the bathroom to be made accessible. Do you want me to go through all of them and then?
Sure.
Okay. 190,000.
I have one question.
I'm sorry?
Ask question now or later?
If it's about this project,
Yeah,
you could,
it is.
do you mind if
No,
we interrupt
no.
with questions?
Any way you want.
Okay, go ahead.
So, the wording says towards handicap accessibility plan. Would that mean that the entire handicapped accessibility will be built up or just for the plan?
Say that, I'm not sure I understand.
I think he wants to know whether it's going to include actually building whatever ramps or
Whatever
access.
makes it accessible to
So
get from
it's
one
all-
to the other
Okay.
will then be in that building, so anybody can use the building. You know, picture someone like June Kennedy. If somebody needed to come in,
So,
they'd be able to.
so the 30,000, is it just the plan, or is it that's?
Actual setup.
As far as I
I
understand,
believe it's
it's
the
what is
construction
to
as
make
well.
it accessible. It's not for a plan, it's to actually
Okay.
make it happen. That's what I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
The 190,000 is from the undesignated fund balance for the Conservation Trust Fund for for future open space land purchases and any other related costs. That has been asked at different times because that is money that we don't have to in an emergency. Let's say the Adams property or something like that, where it's a lot of money. We would have money already in the bank and we would be able to purchase or join in other organizations in town to purchase pieces.
Marla, do you happen to know what the current balance of
I think we almost have $1 million sitting there at the current time.
in the Conservation Land Trust?
Not the land trust,
Yeah.
the trust fund.
Okay. Jan, do you happen to know what the Conservation Land Trust?
I'm guessing Jesse's going to text me in just a minute.
Thank you.
He did have a comment on the previous application, and
Okay.
he said it was just design for the 30,000.
Oh, he did say it was just
He
design.
did say that, so.
Okay,
It's
so
just the plan.
that I did not know, so that answers your question.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I
Well,
would
either
not
way
have
doesn't matter, but
represented
I
it.
want to
I would not
clarify.
have represented it that way.
Okay. Go,
Are we waiting
Another
on?
Go ahead.
question about the land. Is that just to purchase land? That wouldn't be to like upgrade existing
There are certain,
conservation land?
there are certain rules as to how that money can be spent, and it isn't for what you have just asked. It is more
Okay.
for purchasing.
Only for purchasing.
That's why
Okay.
the sum is allowed to get to the, to the amount that it is.
you have an answer?
976,000.
976, okay.
But think of big pieces like the Adams parcel. That was a collaboration. Okay?
Next.
$4,208 from the undesignated fund balance for the June Kennedy Oral Histories digitization project and any other related costs. I think that speaks for itself. What, the pieces that are there now are not nearly as clear as they'd like it to be for posterity. $60,000 from the undesignated fund balance for the supplemental funding for the O'Brien Farm Public Footbridge project located at 18 Bose Road, Lot 2, and any other related costs. This comes to us because the construction prices have gone up enormously, because we had already funded. $163,000 from the undesignated fund balance for the restoration of the Parish Center of the Arts Bell Tower, Bell Cradle, and window project located at 10 Lincoln Street, and any other related costs. I think that's self-explanatory.
And again, that's the actual restoration.
I believe so. Jesse will have us.
Yeah, I'll get a text if it's not, so.
$2,220,000 from the undesignated fund balance for the Stony Brook Track and Athletic Course Construction Project located at 9 Farmer Way, and any other related costs. That's a big one. That had been adjusted. There's a piece in that that was removed.
I was gonna ask about that $100,000, so that's what happened. There was a
Yes,
piece that was removed.
that we
Okay.
felt did not warrant monies for this.
I have a
Marilyn,
general question.
Yes.
Let's go to Ingrid and then,
is there artificial turf part of that, or?
I haven't heard that discussed, so I can't answer that.
Thank you.
sorry. and
This is
then
more
over
to
you.
Dan. So all these construction projects go through bidding and vetting process, right?
Yes, they have to be
We
prepared,
have,
yes.
and we have nothing to do with that piece.
That's why I asked.
Dennis?
Do you know, obviously, there's a track at the academy, and then there is the track to Stony Brook, which has been it's a very good track. I was just wondering, is there some program that's, or some expansion of the track is there some reason for doing this, or is it just?
I don't think it, would you want to speak to that?
Sure, that was a capital project that came through from Jeff Goodwin on behalf of the schools. And the track is in rough shape, and all the courts are all original to the construction of the middle school back in 2001. And it's getting to a spot where they can't use the track anymore for their beats because it's dangerous for the athletes.
Okay.
So it's time for,
Yeah, a lot of community members use it too.
Yeah. Anything else on that one?
No, it's good. It's actually easier on your legs than the academy one, so.
just, I'm sorry, just
Go ahead.
to confirm on the First Parish Church, it is for construction.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Heather?
I'm just curious why Ingrid asked if it was turf. Is
I
that not
can't hear you.
allowed? Why,
again?
Ingrid asked if it was turf. Is turf not allowed under?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Okay.
I think the case was in Natick or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
We
under-
got in the year before.
yeah, no.
The year before.
Under CPC, is that?
Yes.
So we're back to mud, right?
But that was, $725,000 from the undesignated fund balance for the Nabnasset Playground project located at 99 Plain Road, and any other related costs. There was money given by the state, but that money is also being used, but for another piece that's not in this. And the last one, $89,400 from the undesignated fund balance for a comprehensive conditions assessment of the First Parish Church United project located at 48 Main Street, and any other related costs.
So, this one is just an assessment. It's not actually doing anything. I mean, based on what I'm reading in the title there.
I think there's some costs for renovation that have gone up that they're using it for too. I can't swear to that, but
Okay.
I thought it was just an assessment
I think
as
it's
well.
just an assessment, which, if it's just an assessment, I'm just concerned that this is gonna turn into a much bigger request next year, and having this assessment. And I understand the history of the building, the significance of the history, but it's also outside the scope of the historic portion from what I'm reading. So I do have concerns about this particular.
not all of it. I think there's one section that they can't use, where the meeting house is, but I don't believe the other part is outside of the scope. We did question that at great length. I'm just mentioning my thoughts.
Okay, so when I read through this, it was, the meeting house and the fellowship hall and the connecting
It's not
building.
the hall. The hall, we had them remove the piece from the hall,
Okay,
because
so,
they cannot do the hall.
okay, so that's, sorry.
Do you have a clarifying comment, Dan, that would
Yeah,
help this?
this
Okay.
is just for design, so it's no construction involved in that 89,000.
Yeah.
And there was, if I may, there was a piece that Jesse had talked to me about and had written on, so I want to read it. We entered this application cycle with $3,885,000 of available cash on hand. That's how we started. We received 12 applications totaling $10,333,608. Never have I sat on the board when we received what we did this year. 2 applications were determined not to be CPA-eligible projects, and they were dismissed. Another 2 projects were reduced by the applicants and revised. The borrowed project, the American Legion Fields, was revised down at the request of the CPC and then ultimately withdrawn by the applicant. The total number of recommended projects paid with cash in the CPA funds totals $3,481,608. So we have kept our promise and the way we spend our money. And that's our fiscal status.
Anyone have any other questions on any of the projects?
I have a
Heather?
question. The American Legion Fields were withdrawn entirely
Totally.
at this point? So
But,
are any of these projects going to be then in capital
but
in future years?
I doubt if that.
We don't know about future years, but we haven't been given any indication about that.
It's still a project that we found very hard to.
I'm just
grapple.
thinking about the 3-year and the cliff and what could potentially be coming towards capital that might not be in the requests now, especially if it's something that would require excluded debt, so that we can give a full picture to the taxpayers that the override will cost them this, excluded debt's coming off, but these new potentials are out there. So that's what I'm looking for. Are there any new potentials out there that we're not aware
I
of?
don't know. There was another project that we had that we did not accept for this year, and that was the tennis courts that are between Frost School and Rodenbush. But we suggested they come back next year. That's because we don't spend more money than we see that we have. But we have supported tennis courts before, and we've done them across town. So we would look at it at the following year.
The following year, but the
Yes.
American Legion, you had an issue with using
We had a
CPC
lot of concerns about that.
CPA monies, okay.
Or different parts of it, and, that needs a lot of discussion, a lot of pulling apart, and I'm not sure, but it wasn't for this year.
Okay.
Is there any of that was not CPC eligible?
That's not true. There are pieces, but.
That's what I'm asking. Is
yeah.
there parts that are not
There
eligible?
would be some parts, we had some concerns, but that will take a lot of discussion and a lot of professional looking at if it came back. And that's not a simplistic project, because it started at 6 and, with something like 30 million by the time it would be finished, way down the road.
Wow.
So,
Can I
not in these times.
just ask, just for my own What was the number for the tennis court project?
I don't have it in front of me. but
510,000.
It put us, what it did is it took us out of
Yeah, no.
the zone we are. It's like if I gave you an allowance,
Yeah,
you know?
I get that.
So
Yeah,
that's why.
That's a
Yeah,
great policy.
Normally, we would have been able to do that, but we never got 12 projects in a year either, and I'm sitting on the board 23 years.
Yeah.
Good job, Earl.
Any other questions? I will
That's good.
entertain a motion to recommend Article 10, approve CPC recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Beth?
Aye.
Igor?
Aye.
Aye. Tom?
I'm gonna have to say nay.
Okay. Hari? Aye.
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 Shinji? So that passes, not unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Article 11, authorized revolving funds. This is another one that we do every year. Were there any changes to any of those amounts, Dan?
There's no changes, we
There's no
kept them the
change.
same, so.
So it's just the same. I assume there's no questions, so,
Can you just review what they are, what the funds are?
Sure. We have a whole list here. So the first is the lease of town buildings for 65 and 73 Main Street. Basically, the rent that comes in from TRCCI goes into this revolving fund, and it's used on the expenditure of the buildings. We have an electric vehicle charging station revolving account for $10,000. We're not generating enough revenue yet to be using this, so it's just there to approve for now, because in the future it probably will be. But we talked to council and they recommended just leaving it on for now. There's no harm there. For the recycling revolving, it's basically for the purchase of toters and other supplies that we then, cycle through. Recreation field maintenance for youth sports teams, they pay us for the use of the fields, and we use that money for the upkeep of the fields. Senior center fitness room, there's a $50 fee per year for residents to use that, and we use that to purchase equipment, and we take $3,000 every year to offset the operating budget for the maintenance costs. Senior center programs, again, this money is raised by the Friends of the Cameron, and they cut a check to the town to deposit into this revolving account, which they run programs for the seniors. School parking is $80,000. That's been around for a while. School bus transportation is $950,000. We have the East Boston camps maintenance, where we rent out the property. We have camps in the summer, and then that money goes into this fund to pay for maintenance and any capital improvements they may have. The Board of Health has the immunizations and clinical services for $100,000, where they buy vaccines and then they hold clinics for people. This year, we are using a portion of that to offset the nurses' hours for $7.5 per year. The community gardens, $15,000. They collect a fee. I think it's like, I forget, it's $150 per plot, something like that. And then the money goes back towards, global maintenance of the property. And the town forest management for $25,000. There's no balance in this right now, but what it would be used for is that if we, have a logging project to, for like one of the forests to thin out for regrowth, we could sell the timber and put it into this account for future projects. So right now the balance is zero.
Dennis?
Can you, we just had a fairly lengthy conversation with the schools over the school bus transportation revolving. Can you describe, or at least explain, what the relationship is between the schools and the town with regards to the control of that fund?
With control of the fund, so we set the spending limit each year at town meeting, and so they collect the money for the school transportation, and they can spend up to that limit out of this fund. So it's $950,000.
All right.
But there's no other authorization that needs to happen. The schools can
Right.
spend that without
Yeah.
any, I think.
So long as they stay within the parameters, they're fine, right?
Right, so these revolving funds are basically a tool for departments to use that, it's money in, money out. They can't spend what's not in there, so they're useful just to have these programs, because if they're in the operating budget, it's a little more difficult to
Kind of flitters away.
know how much we're getting in for, each of these categories. We can spend up to this limit, so it's,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you.
Tom?
So we also had a lengthy discussion about revolving accounts on the school side. Can you just talk about the difference of the ones that show up here as opposed to the other accounts that the school has?
Good question.
Sure, so they do have different accounts. These are the only ones that are the Chapter 44, Section 53.5 revolving funds that have to be approved by town meeting. So they have different accounts, like student activities and, all.
Lunch, school
Whatever
lunch.
that
School lunch, like everything, yeah, it's all different mass general laws that,
Okay.
guide how those are used.
Yeah, so some need to be reauthorized every year, and a lot of the school ones
Okay.
roll automatically.
I just figure someone else is gonna have that question at some point, so.
You can bet on it.
Go ahead, Heather.
So, when we've talked about putting policies around some of these, I'm looking at one of the attachments we have, and it's the chart with the revolving fund, the spending authority, the revenue source, the allowed expenses. At some point for posterity, I'd like another column that gives the guidelines and the rules that are set up when to use it.
On the bylaw?
No,
No, on
the-
the
on this,
chart.
this is what was in our packet.
Oh, okay.
Did you
Yes.
see that?
Yep.
Just because I feel like, there's some things I would like to see rules on that FinCom sees, for example, the lease of the town buildings. Be great to use some of that against our debt payments or something,
Mhm.
unless they decide not to.
Anything else on that? I'll take a motion to recommend Article 11, authorize revolving funds.
So moved.
Second. I'll second.
Thank you, Dennis. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
You can count on us.
Aye.
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 Aye. Shinji?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 12, appropriate Chapter 90 local transportation funds for roadway maintenance. This is just our standard one as well. Is there anything we need to know about this for this year?
We haven't received the amount yet, so that's the issue with this, it's always the timing, so we just have a generic one. So if we authorize this, the highway, the DPW can spend the funds on the roads on their pavement management
Yeah.
plan.
Does
Okay.
the state give us this amount?
Yes, comes from the state, yep. I think this year it's like 889,000 or so.
940, yep.
940?
889, 940.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And this is all for road maintenance, or is this part of that truck stuff?
It can be
It
used
could
for
be used
equipment.
for road equipment as well.
Okay, so this isn't telling us what we're spending it on, just that we're able to spend it.
This is from all the traffic tickets.
Any questions on this one? Okay, so could I get a motion to recommend Article 12, appropriate Chapter 90 local transportation funds for roadway maintenance?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Shinji? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 13, appropriate funds from Water Enterprise Other Post-Employment Benefits Stabilization Fund to the Water Enterprise.
Interesting.
Another oldie but goodie.
This is my favorite article every year, so I get really excited about this. So this is where we're appropriating the funds from the Water Enterprise OPEB account, which is fully funded, towards the benefits, which is health insurance and life insurance for our Water Enterprise retirees. You might see that number has decreased from about 32,000 down to 8. It's because all of the water retirees are now eligible for Medicare, which is a far cheaper plan. So that's why you're seeing that decrease.
Okay.
Questions?
So just to clarify, this is taking it from the fund and it's actually going to pay that expense.
It's a model for how it's supposed to work. So this
Okay,
is part of
just-
our OPEB education plan that we've been doing for years.
Just the wording going to the general fund can be a little.
It's going to the water enterprise to
Yeah.
fund.
Right, yes, but to actually pay for that expense, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions? Hari, did you?
What is this funds used for, like to pay the retired water enterprise employees?
Their health and life insurance.
Yeah.
Their premiums, health and life insurance premiums?
Yeah,
or-
the town's share.
The town's portion of their
Yeah.
premiums.
They're still
Because-
contributing their share.
For anything you want to pay for retirees, that sum is very little. That's why I had to ask what exactly it is,
Yeah.
but,
And
okay.
it's just water employees, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, pretty simple.
So just one, is the 30,000, that's obviously or it's fully funded, does that project to be stable, basically?
It has been. At one point, we're at like 110% funded for that. So yes, it's still fully funded. So we have an increase at $30K that we contribute into the fund each year out of the operating budget. So
What's the balance of the account? Do you know?
of course.
And I'm just curious if the higher interest rates are giving us some favorability in that.
So let me just make sure I'm telling you the right number here. It's at 1,196,000. While we're at it, our OPEB account is at 11,821,000.
But nowhere near fully funded.
No. It's about 10%-ish.
And is the higher interest rates having a positive effect on that, or it's not that as high as I thought, so maybe not?
Can't be hurting.
Yeah, it's tough because they look at our total investments for the year and come back with a combined rate. So that actually dropped last year, which increased the liability. It can go back the other way too, but it's a paper number really. It's a long-term financial goal. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I was looking at the end of last year's balances. The water OPEB balance right now is $1,261,000. That's because we've had investment gains over the year of about $66,000 so far, and $707,000 the general fund OPEB liability through December.
Do you have that same info since it's handy? I know it's
Yep.
off for the next one, for the $11 million account.
Yep. So that's now at $13,528,000.
And your interest,
Interest for the year was $707,000 through December.
oh, I knew that.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's-
thanks.
yeah, it's not just interest, it's the change in investment value, market value.
Dennis?
Question for you, Dan. You know, last Tuesday night, the select board really, you could feel their pain over the issue of health insurance, right? So are these post-employment benefits, particularly the health insurance, are they in the same schedule as the town employees, or does the water department have its own arrangement?
For those employees they're all combined.
Yeah.
They're all the same plan.
Okay.
So, but anybody age 65 who is retired is on the Medicare plan, which is much cheaper.
Is that just for the water department people?
No, it's for everybody. Yep.
Everybody, okay.
All set? Any
Yep.
other questions? Could I get a motion to recommend Article 13 to appropriate funds from the water enterprise, OPEB stabilization fund to the water enterprise?
Yeah, so move.
Second.
Thank you.
Just
All
figured
in
we'd-
favor?
we'd switch it off for a while.
Aye.
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 Shinji?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes unanimously. And Article
the local
14, accept local option, Chapter 110, Section 110 of the Acts of 1993 to reduce residency/domicile requirements for disabled veteran qualifications for real property exemptions.
It's a good thing.
Is that clear enough, or?
You're gonna get more tax breaks.
Right, so Will Nazer, our chief assessor, he had a resident come in who just moved into the town, who is a disabled veteran, and he inquired about this particular local option where we can reduce the residency requirements from 5 year to 1 year, so this resident can get the $800 exemption that they were getting in their other town where they came from. So Will wanted to put this forward for consideration.
Questions?
So real property, does this extend to their vehicles as well?
I'm sorry, Harry?
The exemption is only for the house or vehicles as well?
Vehicles. is
cars.
Oh, just the
The real estate.
real estate, yep,
And primary real estate, too.
yep.
I don't have a problem.
Primary home.
I don't have a problem either, but I want to see if that's better.
Heather?
Do other towns have that too? I mean, it's $800. I'm not too worried about it, but
So we already have the exemption, we're just lowering, right now they have to live here for 5 years, we're lowering it to 1 year.
right.
I can't.
No influx of disabled veterans coming into Westford. That's what I guess I'm getting at. Like,
We welcome all residents in the
Yes.
town of Westford.
Yes,
because I know, like when we did the slider committee, there was a residency requirement that was somewhat in part to keep. You didn't want everyone flooding to Westford and draining, so that's why I was curious if other towns had that same
There's that many.
resident. Hopefully not,
Yeah,
but
I don't think so.
unfortunately, I think. Okay.
I'm sure other towns have this, I just can't name them right now.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to recommend Article 14?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And Shinji?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Woo-hoo. All right. Old business.
Ooh, right on time,
I
too.
know, wow. Okay.
Minimize around here.
So I'm going to use old business to talk about our FinCom book, even though it's sort of not happened business yet. This actually needs to be posted online by close of business Friday, March 8th, right, Dan? Because really it's, yeah, I said March 8th.
Yeah.
We have till the 9th, but that's a Saturday, so it's probably not going to happen. What we decided to do this year is to use Google Docs instead of a regular Word document, just because we can all be editing our own sections at the same time. And Dan doesn't have to go through this painstaking process of copying and pasting what we've emailed to him. So I have access to that, to that document. I'll send out a link to everybody tomorrow so that you can start editing. Just be careful not to if you're gonna make any notes or comments to yourself, just don't comment on anybody else's, because it could get construed as we're talking and outside of a public meeting. So just kind of concentrate to your section and close your eyes when you scroll through everything else.
So I have a question with you on that. So in other words, will we have our own ability to, like if we're writing on the school thing, will we open up a section for that and we just write into it? Is that how we do it?
That's how, so Google Doc takes care of integrating multiple people working on the same document.
Okay.
So you can be editing that. If anyone has issues, you can do it in regular Word and we'll figure out a way to
I've
get
actually
it
used it
in there,
once or
but-
twice. I
Have
think
you?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
So
can handle it.
I will
I
say
think I can
that
handle this.
you and I just
But-
need to
but
make
you-
sure not to be trying to work the same day, because we're both working school
Okay.
committee.
Yeah.
Because that can start getting a little.
Yeah, I think you two are the only ones
No,
that
no,
are.
you.
that are-
Is there a tab in there that you
can
look at?
actually,
You can both
edit
do it
the same
silently at
line
the
if
same
you
Yes, I
want.
know, but,
Yeah.
yes, but I'm saying, like, he might want to be editing one sentence and I'm looking at it and trying to edit that same sentence, so we'll be like typing with each other along the way, and that could get chaotic, so.
Yeah.
We just have to be communicating on that, that's all, so.
And then, as far as the individual, department sections, like each of the ones that we're doing, since what's going before town meeting is the override budget, that's what we should be describing to residents, because that's the one in front of them. The tables in each of those department sections are not gonna be updated as of yet, correct, Dan? I mean, you can't,
I
you
haven't
can't
touched
do
it
those,
yet,
no.
you're right.
So those are gonna look like last year, so just kind of ignore that and look at your budget document, if you wanna do something before Dan gets to update those
Okay.
sections. But for the narrative, I would say, personally, I think we should skip this went up by X%, which means this dollars, like all of the stuff that you can just read by looking in the table, I personally don't find super helpful. I would just go to the narrative, but just so that we're consistent, if everyone agrees with that.
Yeah, because it was a standard thing where you would always say, the budget has, X amount, and that's 25% or something. You don't want to go through all that. You want to keep
Well,
it.
it's in the chart.
Because it's right in the table,
Okay.
so it's just repeating it.
Okay.
So that's kind of my thinking. Sure, Ingrid?
I just had a question. So if we're focusing on the full budget, what piece is going to talk about, is there going to be a piece talking about impact, or?
Yeah, so for
if
the
the
no
full-
override
Yeah.
budget, so I was thinking we could do, or I could do, like more like a summary at the beginning,
Okay.
saying something along the lines of, if an override fails, this is some of the impact.
And I have the slides from the town manager presentation December 12th, so you
Yeah,
can
and
pull from that.
I'm sure I'll pull a lot of that from there. I don't know how valuable it is to go into a lot of detail on that budget, because if that happens, I can imagine it may not be exactly
Right,
what
right.
is in our documents, right? Things have changed, things have shifted,
I
whatever,
just don't
so-
want, like, this whole document to be about, you know, the full budget, and then people not to understand that there's a risk that that may not pass.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to strike that balance of maybe, I'm hoping if we have it in the beginning and then make it clear that in these details, that's,
Yeah,
Or would it be more helpful, like, in Dan's, you know, full budget document, how, I mean, it it had both
The
a
both.
little verbiage that we put, like, if it doesn't, you know, if the override doesn't, hey, I don't
could.
know. I don't want to overcomplicate either, but I also
Yeah.
don't want voters to just start flipping through and say, oh, this looks great, this looks great, this looks great, and not really understand that, some level of an override has to pass in order to get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my thought on that is if we put it at the beginning, that, you know, potential impacts of not passing whatever override is put in front of the town. I said earlier, you're more likely to get someone to read the first page than the following.
It depends
80.
if someone has interest in a specific department, though, and they just open up fire.
So I think we can also, at that point, in that summary, direct them to the full town manager budget, which has all that detail of potential trade-offs for each department.
now I'm back. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
see your point.
Ingrid's, actually.
You see my point? Like,
No,
if
I like
you're-
what you're saying.
if you're
Kind of
really
like in our
interested,
book
yeah,
here, you
right.
know, if I go to police, you know, the budget says, you know,
Okay.
we're fully staffed at X people, and then, by the way, if this doesn't pass, you have anticipated a reduction of 2 or whatever. I want to be able to flip to, as a president, I want to pick the department and read about that specific department.
That's fine, I've completely flipped again, but yeah, that's, no, it does
I'm
make
just
sense.
worried, like, people
Yeah.
will not really understand. It's such a short period of time from when
Yeah,
the book is out to when we have to go to town meeting, that, it makes it seem
yeah.
better than maybe,
Right.
than, you know.
No, I
I'm just-
think I
I just-
think I see
yeah.
your point, because people may not read that cover to, they're not gonna read, they may not read that cover to cover, so at
Right.
least wherever they open, they'll see.
That there's some indication
some
or
sort of an
direction, that,
indication.
you know, make sure you read impact on
Yeah.
page 9, or, you know.
Something like that.
And the other thing too is, in addition to that, there should be an indication as what the tax impact is gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're clearly aware of,
And
this
the-
is what's gonna happen, and if you don't do this, this is what's gonna happen, and you're gonna make the trade-off, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So-
okay.
Tough
Actually-
one to write.
Yeah, it is gonna be a tough one, so we may be thinking as we go. Sometimes I think better once once you
Yeah.
start editing and
No, and I
getting into
haven't
it.
really thought about it either,
yeah,
but I
so-
just don't want it to seem too Pollyanna-ish.
That's probably a good point. Were you planning on putting the charts like we've got in our budget book, like pulling them out again, so they've got the override, no override? Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to fit across the top because there's like, you know, so many more columns too, so we might have to think of a way to, maybe we show the history, then we put the override versus no override underneath that table. We're gonna have to redo the
We'll
table,
have to
basically.
figure it out. Okay,
But we want it consistent throughout each department.
all right.
And will we be covering the like multiple years or just talking about 2025?
So,
I think the selectmen have to make
so I
that
think
decision.
yeah, we'll have to think about that. I don't think we're gonna be covering the multiple years within each of our sections,
Because
because
it could change.
we don't,
Right.
and we don't typically do that. We talk about
Yeah.
the budget,
This
just the
People are
budget for
voting
the
on
next
fiscal
year.
25.
So,
But maybe in the summary,
in the
that would
summary, in the
be-
beginning, there will
think
be some
definitely to
reference
have-
to that, yes, that it's going over 3 years, but, yeah, I
Or
would-
that there's challenges coming for the next 3 years.
yeah, as part of our looking forward, which we've kind of done.
Yes, one of the things it's important, and that's one of the reasons why I brought the issue up with Tom Clay about the multi-year override. It's the same thing here. One of the tools of fiscal responsibility for town government, or any government, is an annual budget. That's how you keep it accountable. And once you begin to blur those lines and you extend lines over, it can become very complicated, and you can lose control of that, of accounting very fast. So that's why the budget books are all done year to year, so you can look at what happened last year, next year. And if you try to merge them all, it can be really problematic,
Yeah.
so.
In the summary, there have been years where we've, like that summary in the beginning, we've said, you know, we're kind of watching X, Y, and Z in the future. So it'll be that,
Kind of
sort
that
of a
risk,
look ahead.
risk section, yeah.
Right,
Like
exactly.
local aid, we were watching that, it now imploded, so.
Yeah. Anything else on that before we go on to minutes?
So what's the target date that you want?
So,
kind of?
for right now, you still need March 1st, if at all possible, to be done, right?
Or on the weekend, so I mean,
On the
it's,
weekend,
everybody has
yeah.
a section, so it's, you know, it's not the whole book, but we'll be editing the whole book that week leading up to March 8th, so we do need time to work on that.
Okay.
March 1st, if you can, if you can't meet that deadline, just let us know, and we'll work with you and
I-
try to
And
game
so-
plan.
Ideally by that Sunday night, the
Yeah.
3rd.
No, that would be this, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're not voting on the official budget until the 29th?
Yeah, so that's in the next, in the next.
Okay.
Well, 28th.
All right, let's, so let's actually pull that into this discussion. So right now, our next meeting is February 29th. But that gives us essentially, 3 days to finish up our sections of the book. Can't really pull that in much more than the 28th.
The selectmen are
because
voting that Tuesday?
They're
On the
voting
27th.
Tuesday,
And the
So-
schools, I believe, are voting on
on the
the
Monday.
Monday.
It's
26th.
26th. So the most we can do is pull it in on the 28th.
We can pull it in soon though, right? It's not gonna change, is it?
We don't know what it is yet until.
No, I
that's,
know, but is this the document that you're gonna release tomorrow night?
Right, but
I
we
mean-
won't know if the select board,
Do we need to know? It's not, the numbers aren't gonna change.
We don't know
Are
if they're
they?
gonna change or not. The select
We don't know.
board just got the numbers yesterday.
So we can fill up everything except the numbers, and then at
So
that
the
point-
numbers may not change, but the areas of reduction
certain
might
things
change.
Yeah.
right, so from one department to another, it could
It may.
change, so it's,
Yeah.
it's gonna be hard.
I just wonder if it's more time efficient to take that, and then if there's not gonna be major tweaks, but if they move 100,000 from,
It might
I
impact
don't
one
know.
or two of us as opposed to the
Right,
entire.
and it just makes people not have to turn it around in 2 or 3 days.
That's true for the individual departments, but if, for all the summary pages, if $1 changes, then we have to redo all the charts
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah,
but.
yeah.
But yeah, for the individual, there's a chance they won't change, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's, I mean, if
It's-
we start working on this before the 27th, you're taking a risk that you're gonna have to edit something after the 27th, but I'm sort of taking the view of, I'm gonna write it as if whatever's in there is staying put, so at least I've got the bulk of it in there, and then if I've got to tweak little things here and there, it's a lot easier than starting from scratch.
Same with me.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the, do we wanna move our meeting, or, how do you guys feel, about moving the 29th, our 29th meeting to the 28th?
Yeah.
Wednesday, is that,
I am not available on Wednesday.
I like
Anybody
having the
else?
extra day.
what?
I like having
would
the
like
extra
to have the
day.
extra day.
I will be out on 26, 27, 28, and 29.
Is there any possibility of doing it the following week, say the following Monday?
No,
No,
the
because
book
we have
has
to
to
have
be
the book.
done before that. So wait, so you're out that whole week, Shinji?
Except March 1st.
Okay. Okay, so that doesn't
So
help at all.
While we are talking about vacations, I'm traveling
I'll
29th.
be back actually on the 29th. It's just that I will be traveling on the 26th to the 28th.
Okay.
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 Ari has,
I'm leaving town 29th morning, not coming back until the end of weekend. But there's a good possibility I can be remote, but not from US. So I just want to lay out everything.
Okay, so the 28th is better for you, though. Could you make the
28th,
28th?
28th, I'm 100% chance I will attend. And 29th, there's a 50% chance that I will be remote.
Okay.
I cannot do the
I know you
29th.
can't do the 29th. I would like the extra day, and I think we're kind of down a person or two either day, so I'm leaning towards the 28th.
I can do
Good.
that.
Is that,
Yeah.
okay, so if we can move our meeting to the 28th, just to give us one extra day.
And is that meeting will be, do we take a vote on the override
We're gonna
number?
we're gonna be voting on the rest of the warrant articles, which will include the budget and,
Okay,
yeah.
and the override article.
And the override and capital and
Override
forget
stabilization.
what else is in
and-
there, but yeah.
Okay.
ETA.
MBTA, he'll be
MBTA.
getting that presentation. Actually, we have to see if Jeff can make the
Right,
29th.
so
Oh, shoot. The 28th,
We were
okay.
texting.
They're in
Yep.
the other meeting, right?
So the thing I was thinking with Jeff is if Jeff can't make the 28th, if we have another meeting, I don't know that there's a possibility we'll have a meeting on the 14th. I don't know if we will.
Yeah, your recommendation just won't make the book, but you can
Right.
make the recommendation on the floor.
Yeah, well, and I wasn't sure if we were gonna make a recommendation on that because there's no
You just wanted a
strict
presentation.
financial.
Yep.
He wanted to give he wanted to give a presentation and I thought it was good for us to
Sure.
hear that, but I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, it would be nice, but I don't think it's
And-
crucial that we do it.
And it
That
wouldn't be
night.
unheard of to, if FinCom does want to do a recommendation, it wouldn't be unheard of to have it listed as recommendation at.
To
town
be made
meeting.
at
We could
town
do-
meeting,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we could do it later.
But we did that in last couple of years.
We've done that a couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
times. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not a big deal.
So-
Okay. Does that take care of, so
28th, is
try
that what it
to
is?
do the 28th.
All right.
Yep, we're gonna do
Yep.
the 28th.
Thank you.
All right. Approval of minutes?
I just have a quick question on
first?
minutes,
Sure.
which I just kind of, it dawned on me. We don't ever write in minutes that the meeting is, been recorded and is available at any spot, right? Just because these meetings are so long and then you read the minutes, I'm like, it's so concise. So I just wondered if that's ever included in meeting packets, maybe not, our meeting minutes, maybe not.
It's in the,
It's on the
It's on the
agenda.
so therefore it's
Yeah.
tied together, so.
Yeah, but like because I go back and read old minutes all the time, and it just kind of dawned on me, like, I wonder if it wasn't me, but somebody else, like, would they know that they could then watch the full meeting? Like, I don't always even pull the agenda, I just want to see what was discussed. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to include it, but
Yeah, I mean, they're on YouTube if they're to be watched, so I mean,
we all know that.
yeah.
But do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just
some people
maybe
general public.
something, just
Yeah.
something to think about. Maybe we don't have to address it now, but it just kind of occurred to me today when I was looking back at some old minutes.
Yeah, to just put something like the full meeting can be found or whatever, or something,
Right.
yeah.
But-
Okay. Anything on February 1st minutes? Are we ready to try to approve them?
I have not seen them yet. I have not.
You didn't
no.
see them? Anybody else?
I read them, I can go.
All right, it's not looking good. February 5th, any better?
I'll try to get them done by next time we do it.
No? Okay, let's push those. Okay, and then our next meetings, this is gonna be the 28th, possibly the 14th if we need it.
The 14th is also the League of Women Voters Town Meeting preview. So if by any chance we can adjust that, if we do need to meet,
Yeah. Yeah,
that would be great.
all right, let's
Because
wait.
Dan and I can't be in two
Yeah,
places
no,
at
no,
one
I'd
time.
rather be watching that too, honestly. We'll see, we may not, we might be done, right?
Yeah, we didn't meet last year for
didn't
that
meet
additional, it's
last
only
year,
if
so-
necessary, so maybe we meet that.
We may not need that. All right, let's
Wednesday if
just, so
necessary.
it won't be on the 14th, but we may not need that meeting at all. And then the 23rd annual town meeting, 9 a.m.
Be there early.
Be there early,
8 a.m. check-in.
8 a.m. check-in.
Oh, wow.
This is Westford Academy again?
Yes.
Yes.
Academy.
With
And
additional parking.
They'll be shuttling from Christopher and Robinson with school buses if necessary.
So,
Yeah, okay.
And based on discussion,
the night before.
it sounded
By
like
the exit.
budget is going to be
I'll
at
tell
9
my
a.m.
son to drop me off.
It'll be
and pick me
Article
up.
1.
Get my husband picked.
Yeah.
So if the moderator feels like everyone is in the room, she will start with that. If she doesn't, we might go to a consent agenda first, but plan for 9 a.m. for budget.
Oh, not even consent, okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Very
Great.
good.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second. Yeah, yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.